Brad here, PR Week Editor-in-Chief, doing our weekly podcast. Welcome aboard if you're watching on Facebook. Got a great guest this week, Brad MacAfee from Porter Novelli, CEO. Hi Brad, welcome to the podcast. And our usual compadre, Frank Washcook, News Editor, PR Week. How you doing, Frank?
Happy to be here.
Thanks, Did you miss me last week a lot when I was in Cannes?
Oh, terribly.
Yeah, I'm sure you didn't.
Terribly.
But Cannes is one of the things we're going to talk about. We'll chat to Brad about his time at Porter Novelli, pick up on some other interesting people moves, and we'll talk about the iPhone 10th anniversary today. So interesting stuff. So we are about to get started. Hello and welcome to the PR Week, PR Week's regular weekly roundup of everything that matters in the worlds of PR and communications. My name's Steve Barrett. I'm the Editor-in-Chief of PR Week. Going to guide you gently through 25 minutes of great content as we review a busy week of events and the Cannes Festival of Creativity, always a big talking point amongst those who are there and those who are not there, whether they're just sick of us talking about it. We'll try and wrap it up for you this week. And we have Brad MacAfee, CEO of Porter Novelli, with us. Brad, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Steve. Good to see you. Good to see you, Frank.
Great to have you with us. We'll talk about your 18 months, near 18 months, and how you're building the agency. Frank Washcook is also here. Frank, how are you? How was the week last week?
It was very calm. I hear nothing happened to Cannes at all.
No, exactly. Interesting events are all around. So it's a great week at Cannes, I must admit. I'll defend people's right to go there, but we'll discuss that more in the podcast, and we'll discuss some of the work that sometimes gets forgotten amid all the other chats and events. We'll talk about Jim Joseph, interesting new move from Conan Wolf to Citizen Relations. Anne-Marie Swell has become CCO at IBM, and we'll talk about the 10th anniversary of the iPhone, which is actually today as we record this. So packed show ahead of us. Brad, let's start with you. So you've been in the CEO post at Porter Novelli for about 18 months. You've been at the agency for 17 years, so progressed right up to the top role. How's the last 18 months been as CEO? That's obviously a totally different role, isn't it? You're the top person, the buck stops with you. How have you enjoyed the last 18 months in doing that?
Well, it certainly has been a lot of fun, to say the least, right? I mean, it's certainly a fast-paced industry, a lot of change happening right now. And I think for us, the last 18 months has really been characterized by us really looking at our organization and doubling down on our strength and our heritage around doing work that is very purposeful, that's around benefits of society, and then even bringing in Cone into Porter Novelli, which was just a few months ago, as you may recall. And all the work they do in CSR and cause marketing really helping to strengthen out our organization overall.
So that's kind of a good mix. Took us through that then. The Cone kind of keeps its branding, but it's now under the Porter umbrella.
That's right. I mean, you can look at Porter as really a house of brands. So in technology, we have a leading organization called Voce, a Porter Novelli company,
on
right?
the West Coast.
Yeah, they're absolutely great,
yeah.
and they do a lot of really excellent work with high and fast growing tech companies. Cone, on the other hand, has been known for the last 38 years of their history is really doing purpose-driven work, CSR, great with research. Cone really kind of coined and really focused on the global CSR reports and really taking that out. They will always have kind of a standalone brand with us because companies come to them for that expertise in which they do very, very well. And there's everything from truly social marketing, social impact, cause marketing, but always all the way up to a purpose-driven CSR.
Is there an example of you working more closely together that's benefited both companies since they came under your aegis?
Yeah, what's been interesting and where we knew we had really great synergies between the two organizations, before we even formally made our announcement, we had 5 different clients that we were engaged with together. Companies like T-Mobile USA or Almond Board of California. Did some work with Frito-Lay's together as well. So we looked at some of those. And then there were some opportunities where because we had a footprint in Australia, they didn't, but they had a really good client that they could do the global work for, but they wanted somebody on site. So we've worked together often around consumer, bringing them into consumer brands, and then also them looking where does that brand expand into.
So it was a good fit. I'm reading the agency business report, which is PR Week's annual review of the agency world. Your profile was really interesting because you obviously had some bad news last year with losing a big account with the HP work after a long time. But I was fascinated in the way you kind of drew that back and actually ended up maybe with a net plus at the end of the year. Talk us through that, how you were able to do that. It's a big account,
for Porter Novelli, a really massive account. And I will say, you never really want to launch your tenure CEO with losing a 28-year relationship. It was such an incredible company.
It's not to do this.
No, it wasn't. So, but what was been interesting is, in that moment, how our whole staff pulled together. And not only pulled together, but they looked at it as an opportunity. What brands do we want to work with that perhaps we weren't able to work with before? What other areas do we want to venture into? And within, I think I mentioned this in the piece, I think it was 3, maybe 4 months, we had replaced more than 75% of that business, and we're fully replaced today. It may have come in different, maybe not all tech, but we had a lot of healthcare wins, some real nice brands that we're working with now, like Lilly and Roche and some others. But we have benefited from the whole team kind of coalescing around this moment. And not surprising, of course, we wish HP all the best, and it was an incredible 28-year run for us. We would have certainly loved to add a few more, but I think it's going to work out for them, and it's going to work out for us as well.
Yeah. Karen Van Bergen used to run Porter Novelli. She was elevated to that group role at Omnicom PR Group when you took over. Talk us through how that Omnicom PR Group structure has helped your agency and the constituent PR firms in Omnicom.
Well, I think one of the things that Karen has been known for throughout her career, certainly also, prior to Porter Novelli, within Porter Novelli, but now in her role at OPRG, is collaboration. And what's great is when you start to look at 3 global agencies that are within that structure, you've got Ketchum, Fleischman, Porter. Then you have another 7 PR agencies or communications agencies within that group. Her bringing us together, we are now looking at what clients really want, a best team approach. And oftentimes, instead of a client looking at a global solution, and maybe we might not be the very best in every single country or market that they want, we turn to one of our sister agencies and say, let's look at a best team approach here. And we reach out, and the clients have said, okay, so you've gone from X number of employees that you have today to multiple times that now. And we truly believe we can compete with anyone with that model.
Yeah, and it sounds as though having Karen there as a buffer has speeded up the sort of bureaucracy and getting things done like acquisitions or promotions or hires, etc. But also has elevated the profile of PR within the whole group and helped with some of those big holding company pitches as well, which seem to be the way things are going too.
Right. We're seeing a lot more of that. And what I think Karen helped establish is it's always down to trust. If you have trusting relationships that are built on a set of principles and values, you can really bring people together and work on a common opportunity. And that's what she does best. So you look at people like Rob Flaherty, great CEO at Ketchum, and John Saunders, and this whole list of CEOs that came together. It wasn't that long for us to kind of find the common ground between us and then start to not just how are we dealing with opportunities that come into us, but what opportunities can we go out after proactively together? Yeah,
and Karen always gets disappointed when I don't ask this question, and I asked her it in the agency report. There'd been loads of speculation over the years about folding Porter into one of the other big agencies, and Karen was adamant in the report that there is no intention to do that, and she's going to keep spreading the love for Porter Novelli. So that's good news for you, I guess.
I think that's great news. Keep asking her that question.
She loves it. She's so disappointed if I don't ask it. You can ask it.
I think we have a special place in the market that attracts certain types of clients that we're best for, and I do think it's a different offering for the holding company within Omnicom PR Group. I can't see it changing, but it really is a question for her each time.
Indeed. And just finally, looking forward, how's this year panning out? You know, some of the agencies are, you know, it's tough headwinds out there.
Sure.
What's the year looking like so far?
Sure. Well, you know what's been is surprising, or maybe not surprising, but been a great value to us is health and wellness practices hitting on all cylinders. We keep getting more and more opportunities. The pipeline's absolutely full. We've brought on a number of really great clients and been working through that. So the number of pharma clients we've had, other clients that might be issues based around vaccinations and others, those have been growing. That has been one really strong area for us. Another area, of course, is around the purpose work with Cone. More and more opportunities with consumer brands looking to tap into the trend with millennials and Gen Z, really looking at how do you make your brand stand for something beyond the product. And that has been another growth area. And then we've been solid in tech, consistent, and we're really spending more of our time on food and nutrition, which also, when you look at things like food security, food waste, and issues around food, and even some of the things around labeling, we're getting more and more opportunities.
So you think it's going to be a good year on balance? Good
I think
growth
it'll be
year?
a solid year on balance. I really do. I think this is a year where we're going to end the year strong, I feel. And of course, there's going to be some headwinds perhaps, but there always seems to be opportunities, even in the most challenging time, to pivot your organization and find the opportunities, whether it's with clients or what clients might need in that moment.
Okay, well, Karen Van Bergen was also this year's chair of the PR Lions at Cannes. So, Frank, from afar, what did you make of the week? We've covered a few of these years now, and there's always lots to write about, lots of work to award. Right. What was your take on it from sitting in New York and covering it?
From here and going through all of those spreadsheets of the winners, it seemed like PR firms were credited a lot more due to the change in rules, which made many more of them happy. I got a lot fewer emails this year saying, well, we worked on this campaign, can you squeeze us into the write-up? And you have to say no to all of them. But
go and talk to Cannes.
In that way, it's a more successful year for PR firms than I think it was in the past. And I think that by and large they were happier with it, though still dwarfed by the ad agencies and the PR lines.
Yeah, I think that's true, and PR firms did very well in other categories, which started last year and has definitely spread out this year. There's still concentration on the PR lines, and that having the credit was good because they get a line for that. There was a new categorization now for lead idea or idea creation, and the agency that entered, and that still, frankly, was dominated by ad firms. And we saw, I don't think a single PR firm actually got a gold lion with that categorization as the idea creation. And that's, that I can see why they brought that in. Nothing's perfect, and they're going to have to evolve this.
But my reaction to that is, well, so what? Does it matter that much that the PR firm's credited with the idea? Yeah,
I did a blog on this actually, because how do you categorize an idea anyway? I looked at the Ketchum Whirlpool campaign, which won a PR Week award. Fantastic campaign about getting kids to attend school more often by offering facilities to have their clothes washed at school, because a lot of kids were not attending because they were embarrassed because their clothes were dirty. Unique insight, and when you talk to the people involved, that insight actually came from a school superintendent in St. Louis, who called Whirlpool. So it'd be good to hear your views on this, Brad, because obviously all the agencies start sort of juggling for position, and sometimes an idea is clear, it comes from there. Sometimes though it's collaborative, and sometimes a lot of times it will come from the client or an external source.
Absolutely, and we see that all the time, right? So you've been very kind to one of our clients over the years called Bear Crop Science, and one of the things that we see is Porter Novelli Mastermind, a digital firm, as well as BBDO, we submit, I think, nearly 100% of all awards together collectively, because we're all in the room and we're working collaboratively, which is what more clients are asking to do, is we want the big idea. So in some cases, if whether it's an ad agency, a digital firm, or a public relations firm, should they get the credit if they were the sole person who came up with the idea? Yeah, probably. But does it really make that much difference? We believe that if we're in the room, our profession is in the room more frequently with the original ask, that we'll show up quite well in these in the future. more and more of our work, as you know, is coming from an integrated mindset completely, with full creative and planners on all of our teams across most of the PR industry. So I think you're going to continue to see credit being given to public relations firms. But in the end, if 3 firms do it, 2 firms do it, and it's a collaborative effort, and the client wins because it's a great campaign, that's what it should be about.
Yeah.
How much does it matter in terms of, okay, so let's say that in the 2018 Lions, Porter Novelli wins 4 Gold Lions. How much does that help in terms of client retention, recruiting new clients, things like that? Does it actually make a difference?
It can. I think perhaps a little bit more in the ad agency world,
Okay.
right, where you're really building your portfolio out and you can point to something. In public relations, does it help for recruiting? Yes, if it's specific in a category that you're recruiting for, and they say, "Oh, you're doing really great work."
Okay.
The work always it matters and is meaningful. But I think the client and the awards, they all kind of intersect together.
Yeah, so, sorry, I lost my thread there. But what did you think of the work, Brad? I mean, you weren't able to be there this year.
No.
But from afar, was there anything that really caught your eye, any particular campaigns?
You know just looking and talking to some of our colleagues, and they did a whole recap of CAM last night in London. And had a big event for our clients and people to come over. What's interesting, there seemed to be some big categories of the type of work that was out there. Very purpose-driven work caught my eye, of course. I'm looking for that anyway, around female empowerment, and you had sex education coming into play, and some really interesting ways that people are going through what can we connect our campaigns to, and how do we make it bigger and broader. That was one category that seemed really interesting. The other category that seemed interesting is the use of humor, right?
Yeah.
Just kind of populating that in. Is that a reaction to the times we're living in, or is it a trend that we're going to see more of? So the Cheetos was obviously a very cool campaign, right? And then you look at something where you start to look at the importance of earned media in amplifying some of the campaigns that we saw, whether it was Fearless Girl and some of the others, where you truly look and say, you can see perhaps that campaign got so much additional lift and in the minds of everyone because of how it all worked together.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And, in a way, PR sometimes gets a bit paranoid about it not getting recognition. But actually, really, if you look over the group of categories, it's PR ideas, really. Most of the winners are PR ideas. That Fearless Girl won across the board. It was easily the biggest winner of the week. Whirlpool did very well. The Nugster Carter were, So
you can kind of flip the coin on this too. And look, it was Fearless Girl's year, obviously. But how many times did you hear critics of that campaign, if you want to call it a campaign, say like, "Oh, it was just a PR stunt"? Well, if you look at that from the other side, I mean, that's a credit in some ways. So
yeah, that whole debate about stunts is, obviously it's not something we even recognise really, and it's looking at PR in an old way, isn't it? So there was a lot more to Fearless Girl than that. But.
The other thing that was interesting is the use of space, right? So you look at the campaign around it really encouraging women to get a mammogram, and how you look at culture in the religious setting and the pebbles in the shoe, right? Like, what a creative way of reaching that audience in perhaps a different way. I think the element, whether it's Fearless Girl or one of these, the simplicity of an idea. The simplicity of an idea tends to be the idea that everyone gets excited about. And I think where we sometimes in our profession, I can tell you openly at Porter Novelli, we're guilty of this from time to time, is how we'll take an idea and make it more complex. And when we boil it down, it's like we need an additional level of a filter that says, make it simple, make it simple, make it simple. And if you haven't, then you probably don't have something that's really going to take off and win an award.
Yeah, no, it was great. I mean, Edelman won lead idea for Worlds Apart for Heineken, which was a nice piece of work, and Weber did for Brutal Cut for ActionAid, which is a very sensitive subject and treated in a great way with that campaign. So there was so much work across the board. I liked the Narcos learn to speak Spanish using Narcos as your sort of
That was clever.
inspiration.
Yeah.
I particularly
It was
like
a
that
lot
one.
of
But there were lots of different ideas, and the work really bears looking at. I think it gets lost sometimes. So make sure you check out all PR Week's coverage, because we're going to deep dive in there. And it was a great year for Ketchum. There's no way about it. They had Rob Flaherty was very happy walking around, and rightly so. So congrats to them. Let's talk about the other sort of big story at Cannes last week, Brad, which was Publicis, dropping a bit of a bomb on the festival on Tuesday by saying, well, we're not going to actually be involved next year. We're going to take a 12-month break. We're going to invest the money in this AI platform called Marcel. They had to know that was going to create more than a few ripples, and it became the story of the week, which is unfortunate, but presumably they must have done it on purpose. The other holding companies have been pushing back on the cost. Martin Sorrell told me that WPP spends tens of millions of dollars on this, and he'd cut the number of people from 1,000 to 500 this year, although there's no way there were only 500 WPP people there. There were many more than that. But what's your take on that as being a holding company agency? The clients are pushing you to cut costs. It's a very difficult time geopolitically and economically. Sure. Lots of conflicts going on. What's your take?
Well, I hope that we're not getting confused between attending events, the cost of events, and being at events, and the value of awards, right? Because those may be very different issues that we're dealing with. If you look at the power of awards, we talked about attracting talent, retaining talent, and then also attracting business and really confirming with clients. You look, there's some really great value in those. And the motivation that you have within a culture, within the staff, and then it starts to foster truly some innovation and more creative thinking. So there's real value on one hand of this. Now the value of events and how big and large you do an event, that's another debate that probably is the right time to have that discussion openly. And that certainly sparked it here. I didn't 100% understand how to connect the dots exactly. If you truly believe in AI, wouldn't you invest in that for your organization's future regardless?
That's an interesting point. Yeah.
So I that's a big bet that you're placing. I don't know if you take one off the table to fund the other, but that's their business model, not mine.
It's really easy to be cynical about Cannes though when you follow it on social media. But it is, and you could imagine that.
I don't know what you mean, Frank.
If you're a client in New York or Atlanta or LA or wherever, and you're in your home office,
Indiana,
whatever the case is, I mean, you see a lot more merrymaking on social media than you do actually people.
Networking, Frank.
No, excuse me, networking. Dare we confuse the two?
Having serious business conversations.
But yeah, instead of quote unquote work, and you could imagine a few clients getting cynical and saying, "Well, what am I paying you for?" So which brings me to my actual question, which is, since you go pretty much every year for the past few years, could you see Cannes being the same if it was someplace else? There's some talk about that.
Yeah, there is. Martin Sorrell was saying we should have it in New York or London or Paris or
Las
Berlin.
Vegas or something.
I think Las Vegas would. I mean, the thing about Vegas is, the thing about Cannes is everyone's in a very small area, and you have all those chance meetings, you have all that stuff that you didn't know was going to happen. It's if you're in New York, everyone would disperse into the city, and there wouldn't be the same community environment and just feel to the event. So I personally, although look, Cannes a hard week. Yes, there's plenty of merrymaking, but it's a bit of a marathon. You've been before, Brad. I mean, it's you start early and you finish late. But so personally, I think, but then hey, I'm not spending tens of millions of my company's money on sending people there. I think it would be a shame if it moved to a big city. But what I feel is, I think the holding companies pushed back last year, and I don't think they feel that Cannes has responded enough. So they're tough negotiators, these guys. They do it for a living with their media agencies, screwing down media owners. And that's essentially what the Cannes owner is. So I think there's an element of negotiation going on, saying, guys, look, you need to listen to what we're saying here. You didn't do enough. Interesting on the clients, because Cannes set up a committee to look into this, and of course the first announcements were the big clients, including Keith Weed at Unilever and Mark Pritchard at P&G. So they were getting those clients on board, and there's a lot of clients there, and get a lot of benefit out of it too. But I think it was definitely a bit lower key this year in terms of the yacht row. It wasn't quite as rowdy as last year. The gutter bar was even toned down a little bit. You know, let's not forget, last year, 2 weeks after Cannes, 80 odd people were mown down in Nice by terrorists. So, you know, there was a slightly more somber feeling there just because of what's going on globally. And I think that's why the conversation has come up. And I'd love to know why Publicis decided to drop that bomb in their home country, you know, at that particular point. But hey, it certainly got the topic up there for discussion, and I think the Cannes organisers have got to take it very seriously and do something about it. I mean, you know, it has got a little bit out of hand in terms of the cost, the price gouging everywhere. Everyone puts their prices up across that week. So, but personally, I think it would lose something if it wasn't in Cannes. That's just a personal opinion. But so yeah, we'll see how that shakes out. But loads to talk about, and lots of coverage on PR Week that you can catch up on. Frank, tell us a bit about Jim Joseph's got a new role.
That's right.
He's moved from Conan Wolf.
Jim is the very well-known Conan Wolf president who is moving over to Citizen Relations to become its CEO. So that is an interesting move for sure. Citizen is bringing him on to replace Daryl McCullough, who has worked there for, I think, between 2 and 3 decades. I think it's 23 or 25 years he's been at the firm. So he's a longtime CEO there. And Jim is moving into his role later this summer.
And Daryl's moving up
to the chairman spot.
Yeah. So Daryl was a juror this year at Cannes. Saw him.
Let me correct myself. He was already the chairman. He's staying in the chairman spot, and he's gaining another role at their parent company.
Okay. Because Citizen is owned by Blue Focus ultimately, isn't it? Through Vision 7, the Canadian group that they acquired. So yeah, interesting move for Jim, and congratulations to him. Bit of a blow for Conan Wolf, you would think, but we'll see how they fill that one in. And then another move is Anne-Marie Squell, who's IBM's new CCO. Or CCO, or is that a...
no, she's going to be a VP of Corporate Communications.
Okay.
And she is coming from Netflix, where she was very well known out in Silicon Valley. She also has some interesting experience at Raytheon and Lockheed Martin.
Okay. Interesting stuff, working for John Iwata, no doubt, and I think they've had a couple of attempts at bringing people in those sort of roles, so we'll see how it works out for Anne-Marie, but Netflix is a great pedigree. We're running out of time a little bit, but Brad, give us a couple of lines on iPhone's 10th anniversary. What's caught your eye on that?
You know what I find interesting, is, and you can do this, and I would encourage anyone to do this, if you're in a crowd of people, and I've done this at every presentation I've given on a topic of creating a culture of innovation, I'll ask, who here is carrying an iPhone? And no matter if it's 50 people, 100 people, or 200 people or more, 80% of the hands go up, 75, 80%. And then you follow up with who has a Samsung. I typically use that brand, and you get almost the rest. And I've never seen a situation where more than 3 hands have gone up when I ask, who's carrying something other, right? And when you then probe those 1 or 2 people, it's usually a BlackBerry because it's been issued by their corporation. And so if you think about a 10-year period of time, that's incredibly disruptive into a whole marketplace. Now I know globally and other things we're starting to see additional shifts, and Android taking on a lot more share globally as well, but just that in and of itself, especially when 10 years ago, roughly around this time in the following weeks after the original launch, you had CEOs saying, it's never going to take off, it doesn't even have a keyboard, who's going to want a single button, who's going to know how to use this? And you see where it is now. So innovation really does.
It's fun to think back to 07.
Yeah.
It really is.
For a lot of reasons.
Well, yeah, but if you remember, the price point was so high when it launched, and they had to
cut exclusive. Remember?
Yes,
with
to
AT&T.
Yes, and they had to cut the price almost in half, which then sent the sales up. But also that BlackBerry was very, very confident.
It was very dominant, wasn't it?
Yeah, BlackBerry was very confident that it would never penetrate the business market at all.
And BlackBerry kind of messed that up to a certain extent, but Apple did a great job. And yeah, Nokia, especially in Europe, we all had Nokias with those little bricks, and we had that one that opened up that was almost like a mini computer. So yeah, it's the pace of change, and that's something that you definitely notice at Cannes. You know, AI and big data was massive conversations around that, and some of the campaigns demonstrated that. The Whirlpool campaign had a nice piece of technology on the machines, so they could track the attendance rates afterwards of the kids who were without, embarrassing them and identifying them. So it's great stuff. Just finally, look out next week for the launch of our July issue, which contains the power list. So always an interesting issue. Have a look at that. We've made a few big changes this year actually to reflect the way the industry is changing. And we've also got our diversity awards program out for entries at the moment, which we do with the PR Council. And Brad, that's been a cause very close to your heart. I saw you at the Grant Foundation events, and you're involved in the council. So talk to me about what that means and what the industry's got to do better in attracting a more diverse workforce.
Yeah, well, I think it's a couple of things. One, I think, for organizations, you have to bake diversity completely into your business strategy, not just have a diversity program around talent and recruiting. It all has to work together, and if you're really committed, you'll think beyond kind of the 1990s approach of looking at representation, mix, and backgrounds, and you'll start to look at how diverse is your entire organization. How are you using that diversity to drive your own creativity, drive innovation? And then when you commit to that, all the recruiting, all the hiring, all that ends up working out in a much more seamless way because the organization has fully embraced it. And I think too often still we have opportunities for a lot of companies, not just in our industry, but a lot of companies to not think about it as a separate thing.
Yeah.
It needs to be woven into everything that you're doing.
Absolutely, and a can is not diverse enough. There's no other way to say it. I interviewed the Reverend Jesse Jackson actually, who was there this week. Was trying to get some tips from him for the industry on how to do it. He's obviously been involved in many civil rights campaigns over the years, and this is a civil rights issue. So yeah, I think if we're going to represent the populations of modern America, then the workforce and the leadership has got to be more diverse. So yeah,
absolutely.
Absolutely. All right, Brad, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Great to have you on the show, and good luck for the rest of the year. Frank, always a pleasure. We'll see you next week, and we'll see you all next week for the next edition of the PR Week.